Can you all hear me well? Yes? Bernardo?
Okay.
Nice to have a seat. We'll be with you shortly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We spoke about the experiences, the travelers, the people of the tourism industry. Then we spoke about the technology that makes this industry so futuristic, so accessible in many cases. But without a key component, these two elements fail to deliver, and that is leadership. Today, in this panel, we're going to talk about how impact, change, and workplace are influenced and impacted, of course, by the wrong or the right leaders. The title of the panel is it easier or harder to be a leader today? And I wanted to open this panel with an example. Some of you have seen in the recent news how a junior leader in a political position in the Maldives recently expressed some comments, not so nice and probably immature, in regards to the Prime Minister of India, Modi. These comments, spoken on a public medium, on X, formerly known as Twitter, generated an escalation, a ripple effect that damaged the relationship between the Maldives and India, to the point that the political environment of India and also in the tourism industry, they felt the need to intervene and state publicly that India does not need the Maldives, that in fact India has their own Maldives, the Lakshadweep. Maldives, of course, expressed an apology and stated that these junior leaders were dismissed and suspended. But let's reflect on the damage that wrong leadership has as impact on the tourism industry. I've worked for 6 years in the Maldives. I know these leaders very well. And what has happened in the last few weeks has made me think that when we put leaders, and I will quote one tour guide that last week guided me in a fantastic tour in Marrakesh in Morocco. When we put leaders in position of powers that speak of what they know, but they don't know what they speak of, we might face consequences. So today, let's start by talking on the impact, the change, and the workplace in leadership. Is it harder? Is it easier? All of you here are leaders. All of you work with people and have people working for you. So I'm excited to join my panel today, and starting with Bernardo, the president of the Portuguese Hotel Association. Thank you so much for joining me. And I hope the question won't be too hard. I'm known to be an uncomfortable moderator, but I hope I will entertain the panel regardless. Impact. Today, impact, it's not measured by those who are in power. It's measured by those who accept and choose people in power. In other words, leadership is not something that is accepted, but chosen. And we see it. We see it in our political environments, in our entrepreneurial environment. You have an experience of both, and you bring a wealth of experience to this panel. What do you think creates the longest positive impact in the workplace when it comes to leadership?
Grazie, Dolores. Thank
Prego.
you, Dolores. It's a big pleasure for me to be here. And first of all, let me thank the kind invitation of Roberto, Marta, the Nest team. Also say thanks for the support of Turismo do Porto, Luís Pedro Martins and the rest of the team. Say hello to Carlos Abad. We've been together yesterday. Is the president of our national authority. It's a very well-known person. Also Ana Jacinto, the Secretary General of our Restaurants and Hotels Association as well. And for me, it's an honor to be here in Porto. Of course, I know Porto. I'm an entrepreneur of Porto. I'm also, as Luís Pedro Martins normally say, president of a strategic council of Tourism Porto Norte. So I really know this region, and I like it very much. And of course, answering to your question, yeah. I think the impact of leadership is basically what kind of commitment can we build with our teams. It's not formal. Of course, formal, once you are elected, the expectations of your people, your family, is that you become a leader and bring new things in order to stimulate and mobilize all the team. But at the moment, and I'm father as well, so we have this discussion at home, is basically to bring and to know, to keep all the capacities of different people. And in tourism area, you have that point, definitely. At the moment in hotels business, there are different positions in the hotels that they are not being assured by Portuguese people. I'm giving you an example. In our kitchen in Lisbon, we have 9 nationalities, different nationalities in kitchen. So to manage that, it's a kind of bubble question. Okay, you have to listen to them, to explain the aim of hotel business and giving them answers to say, okay, I'm here, of course, to earn, to pay my bills, but only to represent a brand. And the aim of a leader is just to, okay, you have different people, different nationals, you have to respect them and to build with all the team the chances of having good answers in what concerns about clients' expectations. And one point that I want to stress is this thing. Okay, the labor world after pandemic has changed a lot. And
lots of trust was lost in the
lots
tourism
of trust,
industry.
and the idea, the general idea of work. Okay, work life, being having time to be with family, to friends, and then to add that with work is something that at the moment is completely clear. And as an entrepreneur, you have to understand that. Okay, of course you have to give conditions, and we are doing our effort in terms of wages, in terms of benefits. We are at the moment leading this atmosphere in Portugal, but it's not enough. You have different challenges concerning digital marketing, artificial intelligence, of course. But to deliver a kind of service, you need people, and you need people that has to be mobilized, motivated. And here in Porto is fantastic because we have people from all the regions that normally wake up at 6 a.m. to start working at 7:30 a.m. And normally they have different kinds of experience, personal ones, life ones. And we have to look a little bit to that. We have to be sensitive to that one and to understand what's happening in order to find answers to a client, external client, that of course is paying a lot to come to Porto. You have a huge expectations, so you have to, link those realities.
Yeah, it's almost like the people that work with you are your client. So whatever it is that you guide them with, or the philosophy of the company, the values, the brand values, these become the goods, the commodities that your people buy into you, right? And I noticed in Portugal, the heart and the personality of people shines through. In many cases, you stay in international hotels, for example, Ritz-Carlton, just to name one, and it's Ritz-Carlton all around the world. But when you are in Portugal, you are in the Ritz-Carlton in Portugal, for example. So it's a brand that comes through the people, and when people shine through that, it's because they are living and breathing the values that leaders are putting on to them. I'd like to invite back on stage Alessandra. Please join us. Welcome and join us on this beautiful panel. Alessandra Priante, Professor of Tourism Strategy at Lewis University. Welcome. Welcome.
And, being with true Italian, sai che ogni volta che posso parlare italiano, per me è stupendo.
But not for the audience.
No,
Maybe they
yes,
won't
yes,
understand
yes,
much if we speak Italian today. Two fellow Italians on stage. Very nice to have you.
Thank you very much.
The conversation we started with Bernardo really is about creating long-lasting impact through leadership. Leadership that is chosen, not accepted. And is chosen by the people who work with you. What are your views in creating a leadership that makes a long-lasting impact?
I can only speak from personal experience, and first of all, it takes a while to recognize that, to accept that you're a leader. Sometimes people see us as a burden, but sometimes you just qualify as a natural leader. And when you are a natural leader, you need to bear the responsibility of that and just be yourself. It might sound sort of normal, simple, but often it is a secret to be yourself. Linking to the incredible introduction of this morning, who are we? So the biggest journey is understanding who we are and what we want. And to my experience, you can only be a true leader when you're completely at ease with who you are and with what you want. I'm very lucky because I always got to choose what my career was. And apparently I've been recognized as a leader. I guess that's one of the reasons why the beautiful people of Nest wanted me to attend once again this fantastic setting. And they also put a piano for me, but I think what is very important is that the second ingredient of being a good leader is that you have to be generous. You have to recognize that as a leader, as I said, you bear the responsibility. Responsibility is often perceived as something heavy or something difficult. The responsibility, in fact, is a beautiful activity. And so you have to be generous with your leadership. And those who are bosses are not necessarily leaders. The leader, I think, is someone who is ready to share and wants to share and recognizes that sharing not only increases and strengthens the leadership, but also empowers others to understand and to help them in the journey of becoming leader. Not everyone is a leader. Yeah. But some people prefer to be very good followers. But sometimes being a leader is also in small things, in deciding in your household, in your own family. There's always someone who takes a decision. There's always the leader. People say that it's often women. Unfortunately, is the truth. So you see fathers sometimes surrounded by wives and lots of children who happen to be girls. Then you see them with that face of, oh my God. But in reality, it's also a relief, because when you have someone that leads you, implicitly you're allowing that person to guide you. And it's a sense of comfort when you have a guide. We didn't always have a guide when we grew up. We didn't always have a guide, and maybe we do not have a guide in our workplace. But sometimes we have a good colleague that can be our leader. that is someone that we admire because of the way he or she faces certain things. So what I want to say is leadership, it's a natural tendency of the animals. And us as human animals, we are precisely into that tendency. But the more we stay true to the reasons why we need leadership, the more we're able to achieve through leadership. Because, of course, leading could also be accompanied with gaslighting. So I can be a leader and I can gaslight my fellow coworkers or my fellow friends and go into a direction which is not necessarily a direction that encompasses good values, ethics,
Exactly.
or other positive impacts. So it is important that we understand that leadership is leadership when it's accompanied with a value set of positivity, of good impact, of a reciprocity and a circularity, which in the gaslighting sense cannot exist, because when you're being gaslighted, there's always someone that is trying to manipulate you to go into a different direction. So, seems complex, but in reality, it's very simple. And as I said in the beginning, the more you stay true to yourself, the greater is your impact.
It is a complexity, but as you said, it is also extremely simple when you see that people hop on and hop off companies like never before just because they don't like their boss or just because they are not following the same values of their leader. There was more people were following more those leaders before because there was no other options. Now there's plenty of options, and these options are dictating, they're sort of working on a power of choice. The choice is so big, so if I don't want to work with you because I don't like you anymore, I don't believe in what you say anymore, then I go work with someone else. And this is failure of leadership, which is often something we don't want to talk about. We want to talk about how people are moving in between companies because of salaries, because of work-life balance, but we fail to recognize leadership failure as such.
If I may add one more thing, first of all, as you said, and you move around, but not necessarily, bosses are not necessarily leaders. So leading is something completely different. And when you have the luck of having a boss who's also a leader, you rarely leave. But I would like to also add that being a good leader also means empowering people so that they actually leave. In the sense that leading a company, for example, means nurturing your resources, your human resources, creating profit for the shareholders indefinitely. But it also means that when someone leaves you, it's not for the negative reasons. It can also
Not
be
always,
that
yeah,
you
of course.
succeeded in empowering them and helping them find their own direction. And you often see, for example, people that work in corporate, they might go solo. They might open their own consultancy company because they realize that really and truly they perform better on a one-on-one with a client rather than working in team. On the other hand, when they're good team workers, that's when they really stay, because at that point, their well-being and the well-being of them working in the team is what really makes the change.
This is something I noticed in my career, for example, where the company values of a hospitality company I was working with were so strong and so rooted in everything we were doing at work that I embraced them as my own. And when I left that company, I felt, well, I'm a better person at work. And these are values that I remember as it was yesterday.
Great.
What are the values that you put forward, with, especially, covering up so many organizations?
Let me bring a little of perspective. I'm from Madeira Island. And Madeira Island is the ancient region, touristic region in Portugal. More than 200 years in tourism history. And what is definitely interesting is the kind of commitment that people has with their own company. Because you have probably, I guess, tourism represents around 40% of the global GDP of Madeira. So reason why people are completely educated and linked to this activity. Of course, for an entrepreneur, that is good, because the kind of connection, of relationship that you build is better than when you compare with Lisbon or Porto, where
urban environment.
where those effects happens more mostly. The point is, you have to build a kind of transparent relationship with your team. Okay, saying what kind of objectives that you have for the area. Of course, never forget, once you're working with different people, different regions, you have to be effective and transparent in your message, okay? Saying, okay, our aim as company is this. We have to deliver service 24 hours a day. We are not a public service that works from 9 to 6. We have to deliver that kind of service. But we have to also give you conditions in order to have a life outside of the business. Okay? Let's try to build connection. We have big challenges after pandemic. We are facing that. And yesterday we were listening our Carlos Abad from our authority, National Authority of Tourism, saying that from 2010 until 2023, we basically double bed nights. But in terms of profits, we put it 4 times in a row. So we are now at the moment, we are selling the double of a bed night. And it represents service. It represents a commitment of a family, tourism family in Portugal, that are bringing people from overseas, but we are doing our effort. Reason why, when you talk about Porto region, and when you talk about, when I was in the States during last summer, and people asked me, where are you from? I'm from Portugal. Portugal, that's the place where we want to be. Amazing. And fortunately for us, we have at the moment several companies, air companies, asking for slots, asking for answers. They want to feel our experience. Of course, as an entrepreneur, we have to be aware of this point. Okay, you have clients overseas that wants to visit, and you have to deliver service with a team. Of course, we have technological items, but in terms of hospitality, there's a human presence that you have to fulfill. And you have to be much linked to this point and to build a relationship with your teams in order to have better service with better transparency, probably answering, concluding a kind of leadership that is more, more pointed to the momentum that we are facing at the moment.
Right now. Imagine Portugal as a big hotel. Where when you check in a hotel, for example, everybody gives you fantastic service at the reception, hopefully. Then you meet the housekeeper in the corridor, then you go to the restaurant, you have breakfast, and you meet the waiter. And each one of these employees, each one of these team members contributes to the experience that you are having in this hotel. Now imagine if Portugal was a big hotel. And during the month of December, I had the opportunity to explore Portugal from north to south, to the point that I spent Christmas in Algarve, and I was like, this is very different from the rest of Portugal, but equally beautiful. Alessandra, today you join us as professor of Lewis University, but your role of director for Europe at UNWTO has enabled you to see so many different tourism realities. Where do you see values that stick?
Well, first of all, if Portugal were a hotel, I would probably be living in the hotel of Portugal because, I mean, it's not a mystery that I completely adore this country. So I want to answer to you exactly based on the experience that I have in Portugal and why do I keep on coming back?
Yeah.
First of all, when I decided to join this year, and I'm really grateful for the invitation as professor of corporate strategy in tourism, I did so with pleasure because I think, and that is also part of leadership, one of our greater responsibilities is how we actually train the future. And why that answers your question? Precisely because of what you said. Because of the capacity that the Portuguese people have to, on the one hand, make you feel at home, on the other hand, communicate to you that they are Portuguese. So they are proud of themselves being Portuguese, not to be, let's say, assimilated to anybody else. They speak Spanish, but they reluctantly do so. I always insist in listening to Portuguese, which, by the way, is very similar to Italian if you listen to it closely. And one of the greatest things that strikes you about Portugal is their capacity, the capacity of the staff, not only to be well prepared, but also to communicate all these values to you, wherever you go, from the top hotel to the Airbnb apartment where you're actually staying during your vacation. So the value set, when it's true, when it's sincere, and when it's well communicated, but it's also done with the understanding that this is also a profession, then you immediately score. To the point where Portugal is, to my experience, especially last summer, slightly overcrowded. The risk that Portugal now faces is the too much. There's a lot of real estate development.
Too much popularity.
Yes, there is a lot of real estate development, maybe too much. There's a greater attention to the fact that tourism is indeed a top industry for this country. I do believe that the focus must be maintained to the good foundations that Portugal has planted, also thanks to people like Bernardo, that tourism has to be the top employer for the country. When I look at the ranking of the unemployment, and especially youth unemployment, tourism can really play a crucial role in changing the way all of this is perceived. Not just by enlarging the scope with the different other professions, but also by doing, for example, like what we do in Lewis, introducing the corporate vision for tourism, therefore elevating the perception of tourism as a career. Including more women. Definitely. Portugal can lead and must lead in this direction. We need more women in key positions, especially in tourism. Often in countries where there's a long tradition of especially family businesses,
Family-owned businesses.
it's very difficult to see women. So you asked me about the values. I do believe that one of the biggest values is actually the daring part. Portugal proves to be having the courage to be in the lead. We've seen it with the fantastic video of Turismo em Portugal. Turismo em Portugal every year manages to wow us. We see that video and it's so well crafted and it focuses so much on the meaning of words, philosophically as well. But then you must be consistent with that. And so I feel that Portugal has a big challenge ahead of, in the future. The challenge is to be consistent with the objectives, with the words, and therefore to put in place a lot of things to avoid also the backdrawings of, for example, having Algarve completely loaded in certain times of the year, and have more people go into Algarve in December. Why not?
Why not?
So these are simple, let's say, actions that need to be taken at different levels, but all these actions will make a change in the future. During pandemic, I will never forget, Portugal was, talking from experience with my other hat, was probably the leading country that absolutely invested only in training for its professional. Training. So everybody's sitting at home, everybody's still motivated. Let's use this time to train ourselves, to get more knowledge, to include more information, and be prepared for the future when everything restarts. On the other hand, we in the UNWTO were saying, restart, restart. Don't worry, tourism is going to bounce back. Tourism proved it. It bounces back. It's like an elastic.
Yep.
It's incredibly resilient. But this has its pros and its cons. So now Portugal has a big task to continue leading, not just Europe, but the world, to be consistent with the words that it pronounced in the end of the video, where Portugal needs to be #1 in the world for something. Nest can be the most important tourism innovation hub in the world. Yes, of course, that takes work, but that is an incredible leadership commitment. Portugal can be the most sustainable destination in the world. Yes, it's a committing task, but it can do it.
So consistency.
Absolutely. Let me just add by saying Portugal must do it because you have all the attention of the world now.
Everybody's looking at Portugal.
Thanks for that important message. Because what happens sometimes is when we look to ourselves, we are very critical with us. And with this kind of message, we can be motivated after Nest and after this conversation, this nice and sympathetic conversation. But what I want to stress is basically what are the big tasks that we have for the future. Of course, we know our negative externalities. Tourism, negative externalities. This kind of debate, you don't have it in Madeira, where our GDP is around 30%. But you have this kind of debate in other regions. And with this kind of support that you're giving us, it's time to convoke all the partners, all the Portuguese partners and partners from abroad, just to, fulfill and to give confidence for the future. Definitely, we know our responsibility, public ones, people from the associations, entrepreneurs, different people. And just to, conclude in this part, we have and we know and we feel that we are a country that with different experiences can be well sold. Of course, we have to be and to bring and to motivate people from abroad just to come and to enhance this commitment that we are building among all.
Thank you. I think we have diverted a little bit from the subject of leadership as let's talk about Portugal. Portugal is a leading country in terms of tourism and core essence of hospitality in Europe. But we talk about future, but how can we talk about future if we don't talk about change? And change, perhaps in tourism, is the only constant we have. Things are changing so quickly. Technology is changing, people are changing, mindset is changing. That change, I think, before we totally run out of time, I would like to have just one final words from you. In a world, especially in tourism, that goes so fast, where change is inevitable, in fact, it's the norm, how do you stay relevant? How do you remain a relevant leader and not obsolete after a few more months in power?
As someone mentioned before, travel puts people, better people. And that is something that can bring us hope in terms of what our role in the future.
We need to get the door, but before we do that, how do you stay relevant?
I'm going to answer by saying one thing. Change is, we're chemically designed
To change.
to change.
Yes.
And the only thing we can do in front of change is surrender. So how do you stay relevant? You surrender to change and you accept change as absolutely a fundamental part of your life. And you do that, and I think that's the beauty of tourism, you do that as a single person. And already by doing that, you're changing many lives around you. We need to ride the horse of change, I repeat, with courage. And change is inevitable, and it's beautiful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know we are up, yes, unfortunately. I would love to ask a half a question, if I may. Can I? Just to leave my fellow speakers on a good note. If people look up to leaders for inspiration, courage, and guidance, who do you look up to?
Who do I look up? A person?
An entity, another country in terms of tourism. Who does Portugal look up to when it comes to inspirational?
I definitely say Portugal. Portugal as a whole, their own regions, these people that are fully committed to an aim.
Alessandro?
You stole my... Damn it. No, well, I'm going to give you a different answer. As a leader, who do I look up to? Myself. And I struggle every day for that. So we are our own leaders. And this is absolutely fundamental. I learned it by experience, not necessarily good experiences, but I think that's the best. In terms of someone or something that I look up to, I would say definitely Portugal. Okay. Portugal has changed my life and has allowed me to be me more than anything or anybody else. Inexplicable, could be the ocean, could be my beautiful friends. Doesn't matter.
Food, everything.
Forget the food.
Don't forget that these ladies belongs to the country of Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo.
But still, if I get to, let's say, to maybe, I don't know, the Indians would say in a previous life I was, but if I get to choose who I probably would like to be or would have wanted to be in the past, I would have wanted to be a very tiny, skinny sailor with a small boat in Portugal, thinking that they could actually cross the ocean and discover new lands. This is inevitably a part of the Portuguese, I think, personality, blood. And I really hope that all of you, young or old, never give that up because you're so lucky to have it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you. Thank you, Alessandra.
Thank you, Dolores.
Thank you, Bernardo.
Thank you, Bernardo.
Thank you.